Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. My name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's MLB DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. We have a massive 13-game main slate tonight to get through. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That allows us to get more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. Also, if you're not a member of Occupy Fantasy, check the links in the description below. As a member, you'll get access to the model, which I'll be using throughout the video. We also have a single lineup builder, multi lineup builder, and a private Discord server full of DFS pros to help you improve your game. We also have the daily plug article each day for MLB, of which I'm a contributor, where we'll be highlighting our favorite arms, stacks, and bats for each main slate. But without further ado, let's get into it here. I just wanted to pull up the screenshot real quick. Finally had a pretty big win. Single bullet in the $55 yesterday during the main slate, which came during the afternoon. I just ate the chalk at pitcher with Gaussman. Went to a pretty chalky Arizona stack, but our model did have San Diego as one of the top stacks on the board. As a Yankee fan, I had a little bit of Gary Sanchez bias. He wasn't really popping that highly in the model, but the rest of these guys were, and that bias did help me climb this leaderboard here. So just mixing up the model, just really targeting guys that had high ISO ratings, was able to take down 2K and come in second place. A little bit bittersweet, was only 5 points out of first. If Corbin Carroll, if it wasn't the bottom of the ninth, might have been able to get those last 5 points. I think he would have had a double there, and then if he scored the run, would have been another 3K. But yeah, you can't cry over that. So definitely happy with that win. But yeah, I mean, we got another big slate today to look at. We got 13 games to get through, a lot of good pitchers. I think the theme today is good pitchers in not so great matchups. But as always, I'm going to go through game by game, do my best to get this under a half hour. Some of you know that's not always easy. Feel free to listen at 1.5 or 1.25 speed if you need to, but I am going to do my best to keep this kind of condensed. We got 13 games to get through. I have a notepad file out here. I'm going to keep an eye on my favorite arms, favorite stacks, and then at the end, I'll kind of give a high level overview of what I'm really going to be targeting tonight. But like I said, there's a lot of good pitchers here. We got 13 games to get through, so let's get into it. First game on the slate, we have the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Jack Flaherty's on the mound here against Rosny Contreras. And if you see me looking up to the right side like this, it's because I have multiple monitors open. Just want to make sure I'm getting you as much information as possible. So yeah, Jack Flaherty, 507 xFIP on the season. He's been extremely inconsistent. We don't really see him popping here in the model. That's no surprise to me. 23% K rate isn't bad. The 507 xFIP not great, and the Pirates don't offer a ton of K upside. The projected starters have around a 21% K rate against right-handed pitching. So, not really chasing Pirates bats here, but I'm also not all that interested in Flaherty. On the other side of thing, we have Rosny Contreras. I don't imagine he'll be very high in the model either. Nope, not at all. 575x fib, 16% K rate. That's just not enough upside in a tough matchup for me to want to get to him. Taking a look at the stack model here, we do see St. Louis popping. They're seventh right now, and I don't mind that at all. Contreras, though, he's much worse against left-handed hitters. So if we do want to go and use Cardinals bats, I think you have to focus in on the lefties. Their best hitters, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Contreras, are all right-handed hitters, but they do have enough lefties to probably get here and feel decent about it. Newbar, Gorman, Donovan, even Burleson, who's very cheap on both sites. So I would list the Cardinals as a top stack to consider, but definitely favor the left-handed hitters if you get there. Obviously, feel free to mix in guys like Goldie. If you do go there, I mean, he's pretty much matchup proof. Just because he's better against lefties doesn't mean you can't play him against righties. But the only thing I'm interested in this game really are those Cardinals bats. But let's move into the next game now. We have the Philadelphia Phillies and Zach Wheeler taking on Josiah Gray and the Washington Nationals. So all my interest in this game really is on that Philly side. No surprise there. I still have the stack page up here, and you can see they're number one in OF index, number one in team ISO, second in WOBA, and second in team total. So I will say this, Josiah Gray has been a little bit better than expected this season. In years past, he's had extremely severe splits in that he has a lot of trouble with left-handed hitters. I think the model is still pulling in a lot of that data from last season where that was the case because the top bats here, I mean, these are the top bats on most nights for the Phillies, are going to be guys like Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber. So yeah, if we go to the teams page, go to Philadelphia, we're going to see those lefties up top. And right here, I'm not even sorting by teams. And you see the two top bats on the slate are actually Harper and Schwarber. So if this is where you go, definitely hone in on those two. If you need to lower the price of the stack, Cody Clemens should be in here hitting towards the bottom of the order, all lefties right there. We have Stott likely leading off, another lefty. Then Realmuto, Castellanos are fine. Turner hasn't been good, but he's affordable. So the Phillies are a really strong stack here. Just keep an eye on the ownership. If they're going to be extremely popular, like I said, Gray has been better than public perception. Maybe you can get different. It is a 13-game slate. There's a lot of spots to go, but I do like the Phillies here, and they're certainly worth considering. One of the top stacks of the day. Josiah Gray, 10% swing strike rate, 5.32 xFIP. He has been limiting the power a little bit, but at the same time, it's not really an arm that you want to avoid stacking again. So I think I'm going to get to some Philly stacks here, but just keep an eye on that ownership. I do expect they'll be very, very popular throughout the day. So on the other side of things, we go back over to the pitchers page. I like Zach Wheeler here, especially over on DK where he's only 9,200, coming off a massive start where he dominated the Braves. So I like him 371 xFIP, 27.5% K rate. The issue is, even though the Nationals aren't the most dangerous offense on the slate by any stretch, they don't strike out all that much. So their projected starters have around an 18% K rate against right-handed pitching, which is a little bit surprising. For me, I think Wheeler is one of the higher floor play arms. I describe Miles Mikolas as a higher floor play arm on his last slate, and he ended up going out there and putting up 10 strikeouts. So it's baseball. I mean, anything can happen, really. It wouldn't shock me to see Wheeler start mowing guys down here, even though the Nationals don't generally strike out all that much against righties. But at his price, especially on DK, I do like Wheeler. I think he's worth considering. And obviously, we're on those Philly bats as well. So, really like the Philly side here. Don't have much interest in anything from the Nationals. Next game on the slate, we have Chris Bassett and the Toronto Blue Jays taking on Justin Verlander and the New York Mets. It looks like there's a little bit of rain here, not enough to get too concerned. Chance for a delay, some scattered showers, so just keep an eye on that weather. But yeah, if we take a look at the pitching model here, we see Verlander kind of middle of the road, Bassett not really popping. Bassett 5 xFIP on the season. He does seem to be rounding in the form. He struggled to start the year, but 20.9% K rate, not offering all that much in terms of upside. So I'm really not all that surprised to see him down, not really popping in the model. But let's see here. I don't think we're going to see the Mets or the Blue Jays popping all that highly either. Yep, they're really not all that appealing as stacks. So there's just nothing on that Blue Jays versus Mets bat side that I'm all that interested in. If anything, I think you want to target lefties against Bassett. He is allowing a 300 ISO against left-handed hitters. So guys like Nimmo, Lindor, McNeil, Batty. I don't even want to say Vogelbach, but Vogelbach, they have some upside as like a mini stack or one-offs, or if you're using them as a secondary stack. But I'm not going to list them as a stack that I'm going to consider a top option on a 13-game slate. On the other side of things, Justin Verlander, obviously a very talented arm. He just hasn't really shown the upside yet this season. Just an 18% K rate, which is super uncharacteristic for him. 5.17 xFIP. And then yeah, I mean Toronto, obviously they can be dangerous, but it's like Verlander's doing a good job limiting damage, but not allowing um, maybe the home runs he has in years past. But he's also not striking out as many guys as he has in years past. So I'm not going to get to too much Toronto here. I could see maybe getting to them if you don't believe in Verlander, but there are certainly pitchers I'm more comfortable exploiting on a 13-game slate than Justin Verlander. So this game's kind of a wash. Like the pitchers are okay. I'm not eager to get to either. The stacks are okay. I'm not eager to get to either. Excuse me. So let's just move into the next game now. Next game on the slate, we have the Tampa Bay Rays and Tyler Glass now taking on Garrett Whitlock and the Boston Red Sox. So this one's taking place pretty much in my backyard. I've had my eye on the weather, just installed the AC. It's very hot here today in Boston, but we have rain in the forecast. So it looks like there's some scattered showers and storms. There's a lot of coverage, according to some of our favorite MLB weather folks. Um, But yeah, they could maybe call it. The thing is, this is a divisional game. We do see teams a little bit more aggressive in calling games when they are divisional because they're very easy to make up as double headers. These guys face each other like 19 times throughout the year, so there's certainly opportunities to make these spots up. But yeah, personally, I think we should talk as though this game's going to take place. So obviously, keep an eye on the weather. Keep that in mind. But if we're sorting by pitcher, we do see Tyler Glasnow ranking fourth here. He looks really solid, just too cheap on DK at 7,900, and then 9,200 on FanDuel. Definitely in a nice, affordable price as well. So we really have no data on Glasnow yet this season. 158 xFIP, 42% K rate. I mean, if he maintains that, he's going to be in the Cy Young conversation by the end of the year. I don't think we can expect that out of him, but at the same time, at his price, he's very, very appealing. I'm going to go ahead and write him down as one of the top arms. But the thing is, it is a tough matchup with Boston, and we do have to keep an eye on the weather. This is going to drive his ownership down, but at the same time, definitely proceed with caution. The good news is this is one of the early games on the slate, so if there is a delay or they do call it, you should know by the time the slate locks. But definitely keep an eye on the weather. But if it looks like it's a go, things start to clear up, those storms kind of avoid the ballpark, then Glasnow is an excellent option here. On the other side of things, I mean, Whitlock's very cheap. Just taking a look, 6,500 on DK, 7,800 over on FanDuel. But he allows a lot of power. I'm really not all that interested in him. The Rays, they've come back down to earth a little bit, but they're still one of the better stacks on the slate. Fifth ranked in team total, eighth in OF index. So I'd actually play some Rays here, especially the lefties who have a 300 ISO against Whitlock so far this season. But again, keep your eye on the weather. Moving into the next game, we have the Seattle Mariners taking on the Texas Rangers. That's Louis Castillo for the Mariners taking on John Gray for those Texas Rangers. So jumping back over to the pitchers page, we see Castillo reasonably priced on DK at 9,400. Don't mind the price over on FanDuel either at 10-2. Obviously, not the greatest matchup against the Texas Rangers team that does have some power. 182 ISO for their projected starters against righties, but at the same time, Luis Castillo's been mostly excellent. Um, I think he's been better at home. I'd have to double check this, but at his price, he's certainly an arm I'm going to be considering here. Just shy of a 30% K rate on the season, 348 xFIP. Um, and yeah, he's doing a good job limiting power. So I think Luis Castillo is one of my favorite arms on the board, all things considered. And one of those things I'm considering is ownership. It looks like he's not going to be as popular as some of the other top arms. You're getting him at a bit of a discount off guys like Otani, Webb, Valdez, who we'll talk about a little bit later. So yeah, get some Luis Castillo in your lives tonight. If he stays around 10% owned on FanDuel, I love him over there. 18 on DK is certainly reasonable, even on a 13 game slate for me. So no real interest in Texas bats, but I do really like Castillo. Just gonna verify that the model's not popping those Texas bats up too highly either. But yep, I can confirm. Then on the other side of things, John Gray, very inconsistent. He does have upside, but he's showing a 19% K rate on the season, which isn't great. The Mariners have been hitting righties really well. But yeah, I don't know. At his price, which is 7,600 on DK, 9K on FanDuel, if you're playing 150 lineups, maybe you get to a little John Gray. For me personally, I don't have much interest on a 13 game slate. And then if we take a look at Seattle, they're kind of middle of the road as far as stacks are concerned. Would favor left-handed bats. Jared Kelenic definitely pops off the page as one of the better one-off options here. Cal Raleigh seems to be hitting the ball really well as well. He's a switch hitter. You'll get him from the left side, but I'm not going to call Seattle a top stack. But at the same time, really not all that interested in John Gray. So if I'm taking anything from this game, it is Castillo, who does seem a little bit under-owned given the discount we're getting off the pitchers in this next game. And that is what we call a transition, folks. We have the Los Angeles Angels and Shohei Otani taking on Framber Valdez and the Houston Astros. Two outstanding pitchers. They both rank top three in OF Index. We have Otani as number one, Valdez as number three. I think you should be looking at both these guys as pitchers. So Valdez has one of the lowest xFIPs for a qualified starter in baseball right now at a 269. Outstanding xFIP. And if he has any trouble, it's usually against left-handed hitters. And the Angels really don't have many outside of Otani or Rengifo, who's a switch hitter. Really like Valdez here. Not as much K upside as you usually get when you pay all the way up for a pitcher like this. 10-1 on DK, though, is totally reasonable. 11-2 on FanDuel feels a little bit pricey. But the other thing is on a 13-game slate like this, you're going to get a lot of value bats. Once you get a four-man and a three-man stack, you could use a min-price one-off to make things fit. And I think Valdez is the type of arm that's worth getting up to. Just keep an eye on that ownership. He's very, very popular on both sites right now. So if you do use Framber here, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting a little bit different with the rest of your lineup. On the other side of things, we have Shohei Ohtani, 3.58 xFIP on the year, 35% K rate, near 15% swing and strike rate, which is just outstanding. Obviously, Houston can be tough. They do have Altuve back, which makes them better. This is probably the healthiest they've been all season. Really solid lineup. But all that being said, I mean, Otani's faced and dominated these guys before. It's really nothing new. I love him here. He's going to be popular, but similar to Valdez, you can use him. Just make sure you get a little bit different with the rest of your lineup if you do. Um, if I'm ranking the top arms right now, I think I'd have Valdez over Otani slightly just because he's safer. But I do think Otani has a slightly higher ceiling. Neither of these teams in this matchup K a ton, um, but they're just outstanding arms, and they've shown consistently that regardless of matchup, they could put up big numbers. We just talked about Castillo, who's a little bit cheaper. Similar upside though, so three arms I really like here. Probably my three favorite arms on the slate in these two games. Really not interested in bats from either side, but both these arms are so popular. If you want to play that leverage game, you could play a stack from either side, get them very low owned. And if it does work out for you, you will climb a leaderboard, but at the same time, that's a low percentage outcome. So for me, really interested in both of the arms here. Love Valdez, love Otani. No interest in either uh, team's lineup or bats, really. Next game on the slate, we have Aaron Savale and the Cleveland Guardians taking on Bailey Ober and the Minnesota Twins. We get another game here with a little bit of weather to keep an eye on. Spotty showers, moving slow, can't rule out a delay, but it doesn't look too bad. They're not getting a ton of rain, so we'll start on the Savale side. I mean, he's cheap, but at the same time, really no upside. Only a 15% K rate this season. Very small sample size, but that's just terrible. And then you have the Twins, who have a 219 ISO for the projected starters against right-handed pitching. So if we take a look over here, we see the Minnesota popping as a top 10 stack. I actually like them even more than that personally. Savali usually does a decent job limiting damage. I think that is why they're not popping all that aggressively. Um, but yeah, maybe I take that back in the same breath because I did just see Byron Buxton's likely to be out tonight. If he's out of the lineup, that certainly hurts their upside. If he's in, obviously that helps, but it did seem that he was injured last night, so that's unfortunate. But yeah, if you do go to Twins, I like the lefties, Gallo, Kirilloff especially. Then you get guys like Lewis, who's just way too cheap on both sides. Polanco likely to lead off with no Buxton in the lineup. But yeah, I'm just not totally crazy about them without Buxton. But at the same time, they're certainly worth considering. On the other side of things, we have Bailey Over, who has been half decent, and he's in an okay spot here. I mean, Cleveland kind of like Washington in that they're not all that dangerous of an offense, but at the same time, they really don't strike out that much. So it just kind of makes this a neutral spot where I'm not all that interested in Over, not all that interested in Cleveland. So we can just move on from there. But yeah, just double checking here. I don't see Ober popping towards the top, but that's no surprise at all. Moving into the next game here, we have Chase Anderson and the Colorado Rockies taking on Jordan Lyles and the Kansas City Royals. So, as I'm pulling up these stats, I will say Jordan Lyles has been one of the worst pitchers in all of baseball. 618 xFIP on the season, allowing a 270 ISO to lefties, 300 to righties. Yeah, this Colorado offense away from Coors, never something we get too excited about, but if there was a night to do it, it would be tonight. We have them popping as a third top stack in terms of OF index rating on the slate. Third in ISO, eighth in WOBA. Not really up there in team total, which I'm hoping keeps the ownership down. But let's go ahead and click over to the batters page and see which of these Rockies we should be prioritizing. So for me, this is one of my favorite stacks on the slate. The model agrees. I'm hoping the total keeps ownership low. Um, yeah, no surprise. I mean, Charlie Blackmon likely leading off. It's nice to see Jones in there. He has a 200 plus ISO against righties. Grichuk can hit righties. Profar is fine. I mean, McMahon obviously excellent. He's been hitting the ball really well. I mean, the priorities here: Blackmon, Jones, McMahon, Profar. Those four are the guys you're going to want to focus in on. But Diaz, Doyle, Grichuk, they're all fine. I think Tover homered last night. He's fine as well. Really, really like the Rockies here away from Coors, which is rare for me. So definitely get to some Rockies tonight. It's just Jordan Lyles is not that guy. He's just hasn't been very good. And I mean, statistically, he's probably the worst starting pitcher on the slate. So that alone, and I tell people this all the time, sometimes it's easier to just go against bad pitchers than it is to try to hone in on the top stack because I mean, all these offenses, even the bad ones, they're major league offenses. We see this with the A's sometimes. So if an arm is bad, they should be able to tag him up. And I think that's what we're going to get here tonight. I really, really like the Rockies against Lyles. One of my favorite stacks. Going to be relatively low owned with that 4-5 team total. I do expect it starts to climb throughout the day, so keep an eye on ownership. But the only guy we're seeing over 10% owned right now is McMahon on both sides. And if that stays true, they'll probably be one of my most exposed stacks. You can eat chalk at pitcher with guys like Valdez, Otani, Castillo. Load up on Rockies. That's a good way to get different. So one of my favorite stocks on the slate. Just keep an eye on the ownership. On the other side of things, we have Chase Anderson, another not so good arm against the Kansas City Royals. Anderson has done a decent job limiting power, but what do you know? We got Kansas City here ranking very highly, fifth in OF index, sixth in ISO. Anderson 5.49 xFIP on the season, just a 12.5% K rate. This is a guy who pitches the contact, trying to get those ground balls. But yeah, I mean, his ground ball rate's the same as his fly ball rate. Um, Very low 230 BABIP, so he's been pretty lucky. He's due for some regression. So while this Royals lineup isn't all that great, I think we can definitely play them here. I mean, Prado, Pascatino, Perez, Witt, Melendez, Massey, really 1 through 6. I'm interested. Nicky Lopez hitting in that 8 hole has actually been decent value as well. So I will get to some Royals here. I don't like them as much as Colorado. Let me just pull them up and check their individual ownership. But yeah, I imagine Pascatino is going to be one of the better bats on the slate in terms of OF index. Yeah, he's around 10% owned. Sal Perez is around 10% owned, as is Bobby Witt. So the Royals getting a little bit more love than the Rockies. I do prefer the Rockies, but both of the stacks in this game look excellent. And if you want to bet, I mean, 9.5 game total here, two terrible arms, very humid day, hot weather in Kansas City. I like that over 9.5. So maybe get that in if you are in a state that allows sports betting. But I definitely like the stacks here more than the arms, but that should come as a surprise to no one. Next game on the slate, we have Reese Olson making his debut for the Detroit Tigers against the Chicago White Sox. And Mike Clevenger, excuse me. So Reese Olson's interesting. You pull up his minor league page. I usually try not to dig too deep into stats on individual players, but when we get a pitcher making their debut, I think it's worth it. So you look on the surface, you see the 6.38 ERA, but he has 47 strikeouts across 36 innings. Check out the game logs here. 10 Ks his last time out. So this is a guy he's been allowing a few earned runs here or there. Obviously, that he's going to be facing major league hitting here, but he does have strikeout upside. So is he available on both sides is the question. I don't know that I need to get to him on a slate like this. But yeah, 5,700 on DK, 6,200 over on FanDuel. Is he good here? Um, I mean, that's kind of aggressive. I don't know if I could say that, but will I be taking a few shots here on the guy making his debut coming off a start where he had 10 strikeouts in AAA? Probably. He's very, very risky. This is the type of play I say, I'm going to play him. You probably shouldn't. Um, I'm just writing a note here that he's very risky. And then I'll also have some White Sox stacks though. So obviously I'm not playing Olsen in lineups that I have White Sox stacks, but they're kind of middle of the road here. I mean, they're fourth in WOBA, eighth in team total, not popping all that highly in OF index because their ISO's pretty low though. But let me pull up this game real quick. So like I said, Olsen, wide range of outcomes. Wouldn't surprise me if he paid off that salary though. The White Sox run a 23% K rate for their starters against right-handed pitching, just a 166 ISO. You can play some White Sox bats if this kid struggles. I mean, we see a lot of these guys get called up, and then the lights are big. I mean, it's a Friday night. They're in front of a big crowd. I don't know how big the crowd will be in Chicago, but I mean, it is a tough spot making your major league debut. So there's always merit to playing a stack against the kid debuting. But Olson, he's not like some super prospect or anything, but I do think he has enough K upside here to maybe pay off that price tag. On the other side of things, we see Mike Clevenger in his 6 xFIP, allowing a 259 ISO to left-handed hitters. So I actually thought Detroit would be a little bit higher in the stack matrix here. They're really not popping. But I will say there's a couple guys I consider as one-offs, the lefties at the top of the order, Akil Baddoo, Zach McKinstry, and then Nick Baton in the middle of the order. Those three bats as a secondary stack are dirt cheap. Not going to call Detroit a priority by any stretch, but I think against Clevenger, where they're all around minimum price, you could look to any three of those guys as one-offs if you're trying to make things fit around them. Um, so yeah, I'll take some shots on Olsen. You probably shouldn't, so maybe don't follow me on that one. And then there's a couple one-offs I like from the Detroit side, but that's really it from that game. Moving into the late games, we have Charlie Morton and the Braves heading to Arizona to take on Merrill Kelly and the Arizona Diamondbacks. Kelly's been outstanding. He's very expensive over on FanDuel, 8,700 on DK. Going to be tough to trust him here. It's a really tough matchup against Atlanta, obviously one of the best offenses in baseball. But just pulling up statistics now. Kelly 393 xFIP on the season, 27% K rate, very very solid. But this is Braves team that has a 180 ISO against righties, only strikes out around 22% of the time. So we go over to the stack page, we see them just around the top five. So I would rather play Braves here at low ownership than play Merrill Kelly personally. But there is some merit to playing Kelly. But for me, whenever you can get the Braves low owned, even against a good arm, they're one of these offenses that are likely worth rostering at low ownership. So I like the Braves here. Not going to call them a top stack. GPP only. But at the same time, I'd rather play them than I would Merrill Kelly, and I think the model mostly agrees with me. Both are kind of just outside that top five. On the other side of things, we have Charlie Morton, who's been pretty inconsistent but has flashed a very high ceiling. Where's he at? A little bit lower than Kelly in the model, also a little bit cheaper, especially over on DK. I do like the price on him, but these Diamondbacks, I mean, they helped me win 2K yesterday. They've been outstanding, and they only strike out around 18% of the time against right-handed hitters. So that's enough for me to not want to get to Morton, but I do respect Morton and what he can do. So Diamondbacks aren't really all that appealing to me here either. So we can move into the next game on the slate now. We have Jamison Tyon and the Cubs taking on Michael Waka and the San Diego Padres. Just pulling this up here. So Walker's actually been half decent. I'll start on that side, but he's due for regression. 5x FIP, not very good. Not a ton of K upside. I don't know that we need to get to these Cubs bats. Just a 150 ISO against righties, 24% K rate. But yeah, they're just outside the top 10, so maybe you can consider Cubs here. Very low ownership. Wouldn't shock me if they did well, but I'm really not comfortable calling them a priority. But I am comfortable saying I'm not all that interested in Michael Wacha tonight. On the other side of things, we have Jamison Tyon and his 498 xFIP. He's allowing a 316 ISO to left-handed hitters. Shout out Steve Austin. Yeah, they're popping very highly in the stack model here. That is the San Diego Padres, but you need to favor the left-handed bats. Obviously, don't leave out Tatis. I think he's solid here. Bogart's another good option, but I do really, really like the lefties tonight. Um, Juan Soto, I put him on the cover. He has a 288 ISO against righties this season. And yeah, we also get Odor, Carpenter, Grisham, Cronenworth likely leading off is going to look excellent. But let me go ahead and put them into the batters page here. Just see what the model's prioritizing to see if we're on the same page. Yeah, Tatis at the top. Obviously, he's matchup proof. Soto, Carpenter. So it's Tatis and the lefties. So this is exactly what I was hoping to see. Grisham a little lower than I expected. That's because the model has him hitting eighth. I could see him kind of moving up in the order tonight against the guy in Tyon, who everyone knows has very, very sharp splits. He's terrible against left-handed hitters. So I love the Padres here. Just make sure you're honing in on those lefties. Soto, one of my favorite bats on the entire slate. Moving into the next game on the board now, we have the New York Yankees and Luis Severino against Clayton Carpenter and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So we'll start on the Severino side. Pretty terrible 506 xFIP, but it's a very small sample size, so I don't think we can look too deeply into that. Jumping back over to the pitchers page, I mean, he's been half decent, but this is a terrible matchup. I mean, the Dodgers have a 217 ISO against righties, only strike out 19% of the time. Um, I don't think they're going to pop as a top stack necessarily. Yeah, they're kind of middle of the road. They're all very expensive, so I'm not going to call the Dodgers a priority, but they're certainly in play here. Severino has looked good though, so I'm probably not going to get to either side. It's just tough to trust Severino, but I mean, at his price, he is tempting. I wish the model liked him more. 7,100, pretty appealing price on him. If we can get him at that sub 5% ownership, maybe like Reese Olson, he's a guy you roll the dice on. Very, very, very risky though. But at his price, he certainly has some upside. Then Clayton Kershaw, I would consider here against the Yankees. He's just been outstanding. 3.41 xFIP, near 30% K rate, holding righties to a sub 300 WOBA, lefties as well. The thing is, the Yankees are getting Stanton tonight, who historically does hit lefties exceptionally well. So Torres, Judge, Rizzo, Stanton, Donaldson, LeMahieu, they're getting Donaldson back tonight too. So this is the healthiest the Yankees have been since the start of the season. That being said, I mean, it's Clayton Kershaw. I don't think we need to rush the Yankees bats, but whenever you can get them like around sub 5% aggregate ownership, I think, or when most of the bats are sub 5%. Judge always gets around 10%, but you go to the Yankees here. For me personally, I'd rather play Kershaw. But really, it's kind of a wash. This is one of those situations where I probably won't get to either side, and I'll probably feel okay about it. I could see the Yankees scoring like 4 runs, making it so Kershaw isn't viable, but at the same time, making it so they're not really a top stack either. So if there's anything from this game, I guess it is Kershaw, but I'm really not all that interested. This is one I'll probably just sit back, relax, and enjoy on a Friday night. But getting into the last game on the slate now, we have Dean Kramer and the Baltimore Orioles taking on Logan Webb and his San Francisco Giants. Jumping over to the pitcher page, we see Logan Webb ranks as the second top arm on the slate, 293 xFIP on the season, 27% K rate for Webb. He has been nothing short of outstanding, holding both righties and lefties to a sub 130 ISO as well as a sub 290 WOBA. So he's been excellent. And yes, the Baltimore Orioles are a dangerous offense. They've kind of come back to earth a little bit. Um, and against right-handed pitching, I don't know that you need to fear them too much. They have around a 23% K rate. So Logan Webb, another arm I like a lot here. He's very low owned, especially on FanDuel where he's only 5%. So I'm going to get to some Logan Webb tonight. Very expensive, but at the same time, I think he should be on FanDuel. And then 9,700 on DK is too cheap. 14%, about where he should be owned. So I do really like Logan Webb here. Definitely one of my favorite arms. On the other side of things, Dean Kramer, 495 xFIP, 19% K rate, and he's taking on a Giants team. Do I want to get to Giants here? Let me take a look at the stacks page. They're kind of low. The issue with the Giants is they do a lot of pinch hitting. They mix in guys that shouldn't always be starting. They only get 1 or 2 at bats, so it makes it tough to roster them consistently. Dean Kramer hasn't been very good, but he hasn't been terrible, so this is kind of a wash for me. If anything, I would play Giants bats over Dean Kramer, but at the same time, I'm not going to call either a priority. So that's it for the game by game. Let me pull up my notepad file here, pull this up on the screen. Yeah, let's take a look. I'll zoom in a bit. So for top stacks, we have the Rockies, who I mentioned are going to be pretty low owned. From that same game, the Royals, just 2 stacks. Usually don't get a ton of love, but they're in a great matchup tonight, especially the Rockies against Lyles. For the Padres here, really, really like them against Jamison Tyon. Favor the left-handed hitters. We have the Phillies against Josiah Gray. The lefties are going to pop very highly in the model. We have Harper and Schwarber is the 2 top bats on the slate right now. So really like the Phillies here as well. The Cardinals, some of their best hitters are righties. We got to favor the lefties, but I do like them as a stack. The Twins, solid. The Rays, if the weather holds up, and then the Braves, GPP only, but they do have upside at low ownership. As far as top arms go, we got Castillo, who's a little bit cheaper than Valdez and Otani. Tani and Valdez probably a little bit safer, but they're facing each other. But these are 3 of my favorite arms. I'll add Logan Webb to that group. Zach Wheeler, I like a lot here, but the Nationals just don't strike out that much against righties. But at the same time, I mean, Wheeler is definitely capable of posting an outlier. So these are all excellent options. I do like Tyler Glasnow a lot if the weather holds up in Boston. And then Reese Olson, very risky. Probably don't do it, but he's coming off a start in AAA where he had 10 strikeouts. So I might mix him in against the White Sox. And I will say Luis Severino, 7,100 on DK. Another arm that's like probably going to fail here, but if he does well at that price, he could really help you win a slate. So once again, my name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. Let's have some fun tonight, everyone. Make some money. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, sign up to the site, at me in Discord. Let's win some money, everyone. Take care, have fun, and good night.